we invite him here to give his remarks and introduce the chairperson. Please, round of applause for my boss.
Thank you very much. This day certainly arrived. we tried it earlier, but we had challenges. But it's here. And the annual ethics lecture is one of the main features in the calendar annually of the Institution of Engineering, as we have it here today. And I'm happy to be the one who is speaking today. The politician. If the engineer does his work, the engineer says if the engineer is allowed to do his work. But again, we can talk about it the whole day. But I guess that's one of the reasons why we are here. The Ghana Institution of Engineers was founded in 1968 and was registered as a professional body in 1973 under the Professional Bodies Registration Decree of NRCD 143/1973. After adopting a new constitution on the 13th of July 2017, we changed the name to Ghana Institution of Engineering to broaden its scope to encompass all engineering practitioners and entities. The institution is now a licensed body under the Engineering Council Act 2011, Act 819. The council's chairperson is here, Engineer GhIE. The objectives of the institution, as captured under Article 3.1 of its constitution, is to promote and advance the science and practice of engineering to the benefit of society in Ghana and Africa and globally. One of the functional areas in promoting this objective is to maintain professional standards in the practice of engineering, under which the institution is expected to prescribe, uphold, and enforce professional engineering standards. Let me read it again. Prescribe, uphold, and enforce professional engineering standards, conduct and ethics of members. I think that's the right reading. Prescribe, uphold, and enforce professional engineering standards, conduct, and ethics of members and registered entities. This is a statement also in our constitution. I think when it comes to the conduct part, we have a lot to say, and probably that's why we are having this discussion today. Ethical behavior of engineering practitioners is further emphasized in Article 8 of our constitution, where the whole article is dedicated to professional conduct and responsibility. Article 8 provides, among others, for the following: the publication and periodic update of a code of ethics that defines in detail the ethical behavior expected of engineering practitioners, engineering service providers, and engineering educational units, and incorporates an engineering practitioner's oath that all full members shall be required to publicly subscribe to. I can state that the PPEC, which is the committee that I chair, will complete work on its review of the Code of Ethics, and this will be submitted to the Council for adoption at its meeting scheduled for 22nd December 2022. And this is being done mainly because we've changed our constitution and the Engineering Council Act, and there are other things that means that we have to align to new things. That all members and registered entities shall uphold the high standard of integrity in the practice of engineering and order their conduct in accordance with the Code of Ethics of the institution. That all members of the institution have the responsibility to participate regularly in continuous professional development activities, which now must include an ethics certification. Council has recently accepted that participation in the annual ethics lecture, this lecture, and the completion of the scenario-based ethics training offered by the institution will qualify members for the ethics certificate. So just by being here at the annual ethics lecture, you can get your ethics certification given. Now, registered engineering service providers and educational units have the responsibility to ensure that the engineering practitioners working for them register as members of our institution and uphold its code of ethics. So this is the proper behavior that we've put on ourselves that will ensure that our members can be held up to. Article 841 goes further to define professional misconduct to include a willful or negligent action taken by a member or a registered entity that is in contravention of the Constitution, bylaws, and code of ethics of the institution, or in the opinion of the council, considered generally as professionally unacceptable and likely to bring the practice of engineering into disrepute. Article 843 provides for the procedures for making complaints, investigations, and sanctions for professional misconduct, and this is fully elaborated in the Code of Ethics. The procedures allow the public to make complaints against engineering practitioners and entities. The prescribed sanctions include verbal warnings, written warning, denial of an application for a license, an administrative penalty, suspension of license, and revocation or refusal to renew a license, and removal from the register of engineering practitioners. The article also provides for the right and procedures for a member or a registered entity to appeal to the council to review its decision on adverse findings and sanctions. The Professional Practice and Ethics Committee is one of the standing committees of the institution. The bylaws provide under Article 13.2.2.4 for the functions of the Professional Practice and Ethics Committee to include, among others, prepare the Code of Ethics for approval of the council and promote the use among members and registered entities, and also investigate, review, and make recommendations to the council on all cases of professional misconduct by members and registered entities. In 2022, the PPEC has finalized and launched the scenario-based learning tool, which is now available on the GhIE website for use by all members. The PPEC is currently investigating 2 professional misconduct cases. Today, we are here for this annual ethics lecture to be delivered by no other person but lawyer GhIE Ejeben, the Special Prosecutor of Ghana, on the theme Quality Infrastructure and Engineering Services, the engineer, politician, and ethical behavior. Our expectations. Unethical behavior and corruption have become the bane of economic progress in our country. Measures required to fight this canker may be grouped into information and education, legal and institutional reforms, and implementation and enforcement of regulatory regimes. We, as engineers, are deeply involved in the delivery of infrastructure and engineering services to enhance national development and well-being of our citizens. It has been said that unethical behavior by the key actors in this sector is robbing the country of billions of cedis of public funds and working against national development. The fact of bad behavior is mostly not disputed. However, there's usually this blame game of who is responsible for the thievery. The key actors, politicians, and public sector workers tend to blame each other. It is my expectation that lawyer GhIE Ejeben, in dealing with the theme, will expose the bare facts and point us in the direction that will help us to overcome this canker in our society. On this note, I wish to welcome you all, those present here and those online, to this lecture on behalf of our president, who is not able to be here with us today, and also on behalf of the whole council of the Ghana Institution of Engineering. Let us set the ball rolling, and I believe you will not be disappointed. Thank you, and may God bless our homeland Ghana. Amen.
Thank you so much, my boss. I think that from now on, I will have some relative peace of mind. Boss, you've done so well. Please, a round of applause for my boss. Okay, so at this point, I would like to recognize the president-elect of the Ghana Institution of Engineering, because if I don't do that, he will eventually remove the Pokwasi interchange. And we will likely not find where we will find ourselves. President-elect Engineer Kwabena Bimpon, please. Yes, so in the institution, usually presidents are elected prior to the attender. So whilst they are at the backstage warming up, they will also be taking some experience from the current president. That is the reason why. We would like to also continuously listen to this talk by inviting our guest speaker. And in fact, I think it's important for all of us to put down some notes, things that as engineers that if we do, we'll find ourselves in trouble. It's very key and important for us to So in that regard, we'll have to take some notes. Myself, I'll be taking a lot of notes because I don't want to get myself into trouble. Although I work with the PPE, the Professional Practice and Ethics Committee, there are quite a lot of things I may not know because I'm not a lawyer. And I don't want to assume to be a lawyer. So we would like to take notes as engineers, those online here. At this point, we would have to introduce him, but I would have to still call back on stage my boss. Okay, so I've been alerted that it's rather the other way around. Thank you, Executive Director, for that. And I would like to invite our mother from here. I will be visiting her house very often. I believe, Mommy, you have some young ladies. Great one. They've passed my age. Unfortunate. I'm late, unfortunately. Please, let's, with a warm applause, welcome Madam Elizabeth Ohinewas, introduce the guest speaker. Thank you.
So, who is our speaker? I'm thinking he doesn't need any introduction. But for those who don't know, he is a special prosecutor of the Republic of Ghana, which means he is responsible for investigating and preventing, I like that, corruption and corruption-related crimes, prosecuting suspected offenders, and disgorging illicit and unexplained wealth through asset recovery and management. Take a deep breath. He was the founding managing partner of Cromwell Gray LLP, a law firm operating from Ghana, and he has taught criminal law, international humanitarian law, and legal research and writing at the University of Ghana School of Law for 16 years. He served as the chairman of the Electronic Communications Tribunal, Ghana, an appellate tribunal in respect of the regulation of electronic communications, broadcasting, and the use of the electromagnetic spectrum. He also served as the vice chairman of the Appeals Committee of the Ghana Football Association. He is a notary public of the Republic of Ghana, and he was called to the Ghana Bar in the year 2003 after professional law studies at the Ghana School of Law. He holds a Master of Laws, LLM degree from Cornell Law School in Business Corporations, Securities Regulation, International Commercial Arbitration, and International Business Transactions. He holds another Master of Laws, LLM degree from the Schulich School of Law at Dalhousie University in Marine and Environmental Law. He holds a Bachelor of Laws, LLB degree from the University of Ghana School of Law. He's a fellow of the Institute of African Studies at Cornell University and the Canadian International Development Agency Fellowship for the Marine and Environmental Law program at Dalhousie University. He has published several journal articles in criminal law, law of the sea, and company law, including Theory in Search of Practice, the Right of Innocent Passage in the Territorial Sea, and to disclose or not to disclose the offense. That is the question. The case of Alan William Hodgson. This was a commitment to law, development, and public policy, which was a first trip in honor of Nana Dr. SKB Asante. You know what? I could go on all day, but I don't think that is important. When he speaks, we get to know more about him. It is my greatest pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Kisi Ajape.
Madam Chair, thank you for the warm words. Should have warned me.
We have eyes everywhere. We see it all. When you're involved in corruption and think you're hiding, we will get you.
It's not meant to scare, it's just to inform. Madam Chair, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be here this evening. The last time I came here, that was 2001, with Professor Justice Mensah Bonsu. That time I was her assistant on the Alternative Dispute Resolution Program. Madam Chair, I also wondered why, when they gave me the topic, they put politician there. But then, upon further reflection and talk with them, I was okay with it, in the sense in which they put it. Let me put it that bluntly. So I have been asked this evening to talk about quality infrastructure and engineering services, the engineer, politician, and ethical behavior. Madam Chair, I'm not coming to proffer solutions. I'm coming to make suggestions. And I'm coming to ask questions. I will be as brief as possible. I do not like to talk too much. Madam Chair, the quest for quality infrastructure and engineering services in our drive toward development should be an engaging concern for all. For perhaps it is upon that consideration that we may forge ourselves decent existence. The engineer and the politician are ever confronted with moral choices in their professional discourses and in their interaction with the public. In respect of the engineer, he interfaces with his colleagues, other professionals, his client, his workmen, and the public. In respect of the politician, he is exposed to and has to contend with everyone, and he has to decide on the distribution of resources to all sectors of the human situation, which are always competing for attention to assure our development. Beyond private treaties and engagements and into the public space of the delivery of expected quality infrastructure, the engineer and the politician are linked together as if by destiny. The politician decides on which public projects and works to undertake and the locations to situate them. The engineer, on the other hand, designs the projects, supervises their construction, and certifies work for payment. In that regard, they are both problem solvers, yet they are also problem causers. Therefore, it seems to me that the output of engineers and the vocation of politicians affects public health and public well-being in very grave terms on every account, on the reckoning that they are often joint conscious exertions are what should assure us the gratification of quality infrastructure. Madam Chair, not too infrequently, the public decries the state, longevity, and quality of our infrastructure. Why do we not have the best infrastructure as they do in some places? The citizen ponders. Why are our roads so bad? The motorist asks. This stretch of road was constructed just 2 years ago. Why has it developed craters for potholes already? He quizzes further. Whoever designed this roundabout or intersection does certainly live on another planet. A bystanding observer muses. Whose idea was it to design and fit such a closed-up claustrophobic casket for an elevator in such a huge and busy public building? A visitor fumes. Whoever designed the approaches and accesses to this building is certainly not a friend of disabled persons. Another visitor contemplates. We hear like complaints daily. We see the sources of the grumbling all around us. Madam Chair, we may attribute some of these defaults to the poverty question. After all, if we had the wherewithal, we could insist on the very best, and we will not have to sort of beat back on the designs and construction of projects. We may not be inclined to output and accept the not so very best. On another hand, we may link some of the sources of the public consternation to the maintenance question. The lack of it, I mean, which in itself is likely an offshoot of the poverty question. Or may we trace it to our collective attitudes, if I may ask? Some of it may be traced to deficiencies in regulations, procedures, administration of instructions, including lack of internal control mechanisms. Then again, there is also the scepter of our culture and traditions. Madam Chair, we may characterize our insufficiencies in every permissible likely cause. It is the human situation that poor infrastructure begets musings of dismay. When we are dejected, everything and everyone is fair game for blame allocation. There is another cause of the complaints, and that is why I'm here, which is said to be a well-guarded domain of politicians and engineers. It may be mere perception, and thus an unfair tag. It so happens that too often persons who condemn the purported conduct of others are unable to shore up their allegations with probative evidence of the actual occurrence of the act complained of. However, from where I sit as the special prosecutor, please, I notice you almost spelled it persecutor. I'm supposed to prosecute, not persecute people. I'm sorry, I'm a lecturer, I noticed. Maybe I should have just ignored it. I couldn't let it pass. From where I sit as the special prosecutor of the Republic, it cannot be all perception. It is also experiential. And this is the problem. I wish it remained in the province of perception. That would make my work easier. And I would have been left with nothing to do except to explain quietly to the complainants that the reality is not what they think it is, and that it is only a bad dream they may wake up from if they chose to. And happily, there is some substance in the allegations I receive, and we cannot overlook them. It is the elephants in the room we must acknowledge and address. I am referring to lack of ethicalness, a strong foundation for corruption. Madam Chair, perhaps we cannot describe the malaise of corruption better than as captured by our own Kofi Annan in his foreword on the General Assembly resolution adopting the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. And this is what he said. Corruption is an insidious plague that has a wide range of corrosive effects on societies. It undermines democracy and the rule of law. It leads to violations of human rights. It distorts markets. It erodes the quality of life. And it allows organized crime, terrorism, and other threats to human security to flourish. In our context, Madam Chair, lack of ethicalness begets morally opprobrious conduct. It engenders greed and individual interests. It encourages the setting aside of regulations. It lowers standards. It dilutes the skill and care required in the design and execution of projects. And sadly, it breeds corrupt collusion between the politician and the engineer through the inordinate barter of promise for promise, bribery, and illicit enrichment to our collective impairment. In my estimation, ethics in the general scheme of affairs describes a system of principles that affect how people make decisions and how they lead their lives. Ethics are a product of several considerations spanning from religion to the professions. On all accounts, we may characterize ethics as a form of moral philosophy. Admittedly, morality can be a very vexed question and sometimes an unruly horse, as there is no agreed form of morality among humans. Sometimes we ask, whose morality should we enforce? Is it the man on the Medina Trotro or the man who lives in cantonments? Therefore, I use the term in the very limited sense of making a choice out of two or more probable courses of action. Certainly, questions of ethics do not arise if the actor was placed in a situation in which he did not have a choice in respect of his actions. This may arise in cases of insurmountable duress, like the gunman situation writ large, your money or your life. In that situation, you do not have a choice. You either give the gunman your money or he kills you. Another illustration may be where a person is faced with imminent death upon a deadly attack by an adversary, and that person kills the attacker in self-defense. Here, the person attacked had no choice, and he could not be expected to engage in detached reflection in the face of an uplifted knife or gun. In these cases, the person is pinned down to choose between life or death. This is no choice at all, and this is not the situation I'm referring to. On another score, I am not referring to ethical dilemmas in which a person is confronted with a difficult situation between two courses of action, each of which produces morally conflicting results. A typical example is the trolley problem. In our context, I'm referring to where a person is not faced with a threat to his life or his limbs, and he is not faced with choosing between two evils. I'm referring to where a person is at liberty to choose between one of at least two courses of action, one producing joyless results, except for the actor, while the other produces agreeable results. I'm referring to a choice between good and bad. Madam Chair, as I intimated earlier, there are several forms of ethics. I would like to dwell on two, as they appear to me to be the most appropriate in our circumstances. The first is termed deontological ethics, that is, duty-based ethics, or ethics of moral obligations. This stands for the making of a choice from competing courses of action out of a belief that the choice we are making is the right course, and thereby we act accordingly. The second is ethics of consequentialism, and this posits opting for the course of action that produces the best overall consequences or results. These two constructs have their obvious utility. The first, which is ethics of moral obligations, contemplates the rightness of a choice. And the second, which is ethics of consequentialism, looks to the best results. Madam Chair, I propose that we conjoin these two forms of ethics to guide our conduct. While contemplating the rightness of our actions, we must contemporaneously reckon their consequences. It seems to me that it is only when we structure the question of ethics on these joint considerations that we may assure ourselves quality infrastructure and engineering services. Madam Chair, the question then will become, am I doing this because I believe that it is the right thing to do? And will it produce the best results or consequences? That is what I propose. Throughout the development of the law and ethical conduct regulating engineering services, two legal principles have stood out in mastery. The first is the neighbor principle. Lawyers know this a lot. And the other is the rescue principle. Both principles highlight the gravity of the consequences of our actions in interrelated ways of vividly reminding us of the adverse effects our overt actions and inactions may perpetrate. Madam Chair, permit me to illustrate. And I'm going to illustrate with two cases. In the evening of 26 August 1928, yes, a long time ago, two women went to a cafe in Paisley in Scotland and ordered drinks. One of the women, who was a shop assistant, but was described in the law report as a pauper, was named Mrs. May Mallister or Donoghue. There's a reason why she was described as a pauper. We'll come to it. She asked for a mix of ice cream and ginger beer. It was paid for by her friend. The owner of the cafe brought out a tumbler of ice cream and ginger beer contained in an opaque brown bottle. The women proceeded to have their drinks. At some point, May's friend poured the remaining beer onto the ice cream. There they discovered a decomposed snail floating out of the bottle and onto the ice cream. May claimed that she fell ill from the sight of the decomposed snail and that she also suffered abdominal pains. You have brought yourself in short. She decided to sue someone for her trouble. She initiated legal proceedings against the cafe owner who served the drinks and the manufacturer of the beer, Mr. David Stevenson. She later abandoned the suit against the cafe owner but continued the action against the manufacturer of the beer, probably because he had deeper pockets. And the case has become famously known to lawyers as Donoghue and Stevenson. Madam Chair, let us leave Mrs. Donoghue and Mr. Stevenson for the time being. We'll return back to them shortly. I now invite you to go back in time with me again, this time even more historical than the first. This is in 1921. And across the Atlantic to the state of New York in the United States. There, the International Railway Company had built and was operating an electric train between the cities of Buffalo and Niagara Falls. There was a point on the line where an overhead crossing carried the tracks above the central New York line toward Erie in Pennsylvania. The engineers will understand this better. I chose this case because of them. A gradual incline upwards over the trestle raised the tracks to a height of about 25 feet. I'm sure they are picturing what I'm saying. A turn was then made to the left at an angle of 64 to 84 degrees. After making this turn, the lines passed over a bridge, which was about 150 feet long from one abutment to the other. Then came a turn to the right at about the same angle, down the same kind of incline. Did I hear this? To the grid. Above the trestles, the tracks were laid on ties and guarded at the ends. You get the picture. There was an overhang of the train cars, which was accentuated at the curves. On the bridge, a narrow footpath ran between the tracks, and beyond the line of the overhang, there were tie rods and a protecting rail. Someone is clearly calling for trouble. Our subject here in this case is one Mr. Wagner. He boarded a train with his cousin at a station near the bottom of one of the trestles. Other passengers who entered at the same time had filled the platform and blocked admission to the aisle. The platform was fitted with doors, but the conductor had left them open. More trouble. At a point, the train was moving at a constant speed between 6 and 8 miles an hour as it turned the curve. Then, there was a violent lurch, and Mr. Wagner's cousin was thrown out, near the point where the trestle changed to a bridge. A cry was raised, "Man overboard." The train went on across the bridge and stopped near the foot of the incline. Night had fallen by the time. Mr. Wagner walked along the trestle for about a distance of 445 feet, looking for his cousin. He arrived at the bridge where he thought he would find his cousin's body. He claimed, and this is very important, that he was asked to go there by the conductor. He also claimed that the conductor followed him with a candle. Mind you, this is 1921. The conductor denied both claims. Several other persons went beneath the trestle, and they soon discovered the body of Mr. Wagner's cousin under the bridge. But mind you, Mr. Wagner was on top of the bridge. All of a sudden, those who were underneath the bridge just heard a noise. Mr. Wagner fell through and crashed downstairs. He could not see much because it was dark. He had missed his footing and fell to the ground. He sued the railway company for the injury he suffered upon falling through to the ground. This is the suit that has become famously known to lawyers as Wagner International Railway Company. Now, Madam Chair, let us return to Mrs. Donoghue in Scotland. She had several hurdles to scale over owing to the prevailing legal thought at the time. Chief of the seemingly insurmountable blocks was that she could not maintain an action against the manufacturer of the beer for breach of contract, since she did not pay for the drink. Recall that she was described as a pauper. It was her friend who paid for the drink. Then again, it was very difficult to establish the facts and to prove that Mr. Stevenson had knowingly put out a dangerous product. As to who was claiming there was a decomposed snail, it was the two ladies. No one else saw the decomposed snail. She said she had abdominal pains. We couldn't see her pains. And she said she fell ill because she saw the decomposed snail. Who are you to contest that? And further, the prevailing precedent at the time required her to prove that she had actually been injured by the breach of duty owed to her by Mr. Stevenson, to take reasonable care to avoid such injury. Her lawyer argued that Mr. Stevenson owed the duty of care to his client, and that he had breached the duty by failing to ensure a system that would churn out clean bottles on the production line, especially as he knew that the bottles we put on the market containing a substance for human consumption. Further, he contended that Mrs. Donoghue had no reason to suspect that the opaque bottle contained nothing more than pure ginger beer. Naturally, the manufacturer of the beer denied these allegations, which his lawyer described as grossly exaggerated. I would have done so. And he contended that any illness suffered by Mrs. Donoghue was a result of pre-existing illness. Once again, recall, she was a pauper. Much like Mrs. Donoghue in Scotland, Mr. Wagner also faced a seemingly insurmountable legal obstacle in New York. His cousin was the one who had fallen from the train. He didn't fall from the train. He had fallen from the footbridge. Thus, it appeared that he had no remedy for his injuries unless it could be established that he had been invited by the conductor to go upon the bridge, and also that the conductor followed him with a source of light. Now, the court in both cases intrinsically recognized, and this is my point, the engineering default and product defect as arising from conduct which did not take into consideration their consequences or their outcomes. Now, in deciding the case in respect of Mrs. Donoghue, Lord Atkin, one of the lordships in their majority, whose judgment has become celebrated through generations of lawyers and non-lawyers alike, said this. And this has been the foundation of product liability in our jurisdiction. The liability for negligence, whether you style it such or treat it as in other systems a species of culpa, is no doubt based upon a general public sentiment of moral wrongdoing for which the offender must pay. But acts or omissions which any moral code would censure cannot, in a practical world, be treated so as to give a right to every person injured by them to demand relief. In this way, rules of law arise which limit the range of complainants and the extent of their remedy. The rule that you are to love your neighbor becomes in law, you must not injure your neighbor, and the lawyer's question, who is my neighbor, receives a restricted reply. You must take reasonable care to avoid acts or omissions which you can reasonably foresee would likely injure your neighbor. Who then, in law, is my neighbor? The answer seems to be persons who are so closely and directly affected by my act that I ought reasonably to have them in contemplation as being so affected when I'm directing my mind to the acts or omissions which are called in question. Madam Chair, this is what I said has become known as the neighbor principle. Then, in respect of Mr. Wagner, back to New York, Justice Cardozo laid down what has become known as the rescue principle, which is the second one. He stated, danger invites rescue. The cry of distress is the summons to relief. The law does not ignore these reactions of the mind in tracing conduct to its consequences. It recognizes them as normal. It places their effects within the range of the natural and probable. The wrong that imperils life is a wrong to the imperiled victim. It is a wrong also to his rescuer. The state that leaves an opening in a bridge is liable to the child that falls into the stream, but liable also to the parent who plunges to its aid. The railroad company whose train approaches without signal is a wrongdoer toward the traveler surprised between the rails, but a wrongdoer also to the bystander who drags him from the path. The risk of rescue, if only it be not wanton, is born of the occasion. The emergency begets the man. The wrongdoer may not have foreseen the coming of a deliverer, but he is accountable as if he had. Madam Chair, I've gone through this excursion to state that these cases show that in the ordinary circumstances of mankind, the effects and consequences of our actions are bound to impact the public to indescribable degrees. Therefore, in addressing our minds to our acts that are called into question, engineers and politicians, we should consider whether it will probably cause or contribute to cause an unhappy event. When we fail to advert our minds to the causal link or nexus between our conduct and the common weal of society and the unhappy turn of events our actions may produce, we leave a trail of adversely affected persons whose only recourse may be to resort to legal proceedings. However, Madam Chair, you must bear in mind, as the illustrated cases show, that it is not every unfortunate result of our actions which is redressable by the law. And even when the law steps in an attempt not to have a wrong without a remedy, the cure either comes too late in the day and is never able to revert the adversely affected person to the position he was in before the unhappy event ensued. For instance, if by my unethical conduct as an engineer, I am not one, I cause someone injury and he loses his leg through amputation, the law may offer him a recompense of monetary damages. However, he can never be restored to his former self, and he will be left with all the time in the world to think about his lost limb, money notwithstanding. The lesson here is this, Madam Chair. We must not be reckless as to the consequences of our actions. If you weigh the options by engaging in reasonable caution and observation, and you recognize that it is obvious that there will be serious risk of the production of unhappy results in respect of a course of action, yet you still opt for that path, then you are clearly reckless as to the consequences of your actions. And this is the height of unethical conduct. And this is epitomized by permitting a politician and a contractor to influence your decision in that reprehensible promise for promise, live and let live bribery regime. Madam Chair, the professional engineering practice of the Ghana Institution of Engineering, from which you read, which contains the code of conduct of members of the institution, has the objective of ensuring that engineering practice in the country conforms to established technical, environmental, and safety standards. It also calls on members to discharge their duties with fidelity to the public and to uphold honesty, justice, and courtesy that form a moral philosophy that constitutes the foundation of ethics. These are not my words, it's yours. However, it is very thin on issues on corruption. The institution may want to take a look at that. Please nurture the abhorrence of corruption and corruption-related acts in-house, lest there is a clear and present danger that the members may fall foul of the law. Guard jealously against external influences and have little patience for fraud, corruption, bribery, and sharp practice. To the politician, I will ask a question. What do I tell the citizen who ponders why we do not have the best infrastructure as they do in some places? To all of us, I have several questions. They are familiar to you. What do I tell the motorists who ask why our roads are so bad? To the motorist who quizzes why a stretch of road was constructed just 2 years ago, but it has developed craters for potholes already. What do I tell, I'm saying as special prosecutor, to the observing bystander who muses about the interstellar planetary origins of the designer of that roundabout or intersection? What do I tell to the visitor who fumes about whose idea it was to design and fit that close-up claustrophobic casket for an elevator in that huge and busy public building? What do I tell to the other visitor who contemplates the friendliness or otherwise of the person who designed the approaches and accesses to that public building? Madam Chair, may the discontentment lessen. May the tenor and tone of our conversation change. Thank you very much.
Have we finished clapping? You know, there's something which is said. Sometimes when somebody speaks, you try to summarize and pick the key points. If I attempt to do that, it might be longer than what he said. So, chairperson says, don't. Madam Chair, thank you very much. So, yeah, brilliant. That's all I will say. The floor is open for questions. And please, we want to go straight to the point. We don't want, I've summarized it, brilliant. So you don't have to tell us, special prosecutor, we appreciate this has been a very brilliant speech. Then before, 3 sentences before you get to the main question. So if you have questions, clarifications, or you have something that you want to tell us to support what he has said, the floor is open now, and let's try to be brief and to the point. We invited Mr. Kisi Ejebeng to speak to us. The rest of us are not coming to give a lecture today. It might be your turn another time. The floor is open. Engineer Vice President, please, the microphone is yours. No, we'll take about 4 questions, then we'll let you come.
Thank you for the opportunity. I don't have evidence, but I heard during the construction of the Kaneshi Road, an engineer insisted that the right thing be done. He refused to certify payment. He was dismissed. He went and joined a private company. They followed up and got him dismissed. When we talk about engineers not doing their work professionally and ethically, For some, it's just survival. I have married, I have children, and I have this job. If I want to do it the right way, I get sacked. I have forgotten how to farm to be able to take care of the family. So, out of fear, I succumb. And even if I succumb, I also benefit. So under these circumstances, what advice does the person have for the engineers who are afraid to put their feet down and do their work professionally and ethically? Thank you.
Let's give him a round of applause. I heard stories about his exploits when he was in Ghana Water Company many years ago, and then the kind of struggles he went through in similar cases. So I'm surprised he went to the road sector and not the water sector. Anyway, we want to take 3 more questions before we allow the special prosecutor to. In fact, his predecessor was called Special Kwesipita. We didn't put that one. Special Kwesipita. We want to take 3 more questions before, or contributions or anything before he comes to address them. Online, please check online if there are questions which have been given online. I'm supposed to be receiving them. I haven't received anything yet. So if there are any questions online, please, you can let us have them. Or if, Engineer President, past President, Stephen Amweni Yankson, you are welcome. Steve Amweni Yankson. Thank you very much. Are we saying what was said was down to earth, or we are so bamboozled? Okay, Engineer, chair of our membership committee on our council.
Thank you very much. Since I'm not supposed to give any comment, I'll leave that. Listening to you, I want to find out the role. I know you mentioned it, but the role of our culture and traditions in the consequential effect that you talked about. Is it that we are people who accept certain, it's weird to say, certain outputs, or we just accept things the way that we are not able to question either the politician or the engineer in their actions vis-a-vis the way our culture, let me put it out, the way our culture plays a role in the issue about ethics. I don't know whether my question is quite clear. The role of our culture in ethics in the scheme of things. Thank you.
So maybe just to add a little bit to his question, somebody said that in a traditional setting, if there's a case and you're taking to the chief, I take a sheep, you take a goat. I'm not expecting that the judgment will be influenced by the sheep or the goat, but we know that's how the chief is paid. So some people are intentionally use sheep and goats. Some people are moving that into systems now. But there may be people who could have done that, not expecting that it is going to influence the judgment. Is that acceptable? What are we supposed to do with our culture and the way we are going now? So I think we have just 2 questions for now. And okay, there's a 3rd one from the chairman of the Engineering Council, Engineer Dr. Kwame Boachi, Senior. From the land of the spirits. That's how he calls himself, that he's from the land of the spirits.
Yeah. Question. Under our current political dispensation, do you think the fight against corruption is winnable? And if so, what would you consider victory?
So, this last question is another lecture. So, Madam Chair, with your permission, will allow the special prosecutor to address these 3. Thank you.
Sir, I feel your pain. It is a tough moral question. Very tough. But I think I addressed it. By the scheme of how our laws have been put together, you would have to stamp your feet. And this is what I refer to as choices. It is only when you are faced between life and death situation that you do not have a choice about the matter. Unfortunately, that is how it is, and maybe that is how it should be. And so, if you have a choice between taking it and not taking it, that is a choice. So if you take it and it produces bad results, you will be liable. There, it wasn't a matter of life and death. The law does not reckon that you are hungry, your wife is hungry, is on you for Christmas, your kids are hungry, and so that becomes a matter of life and death. It is not a matter of life and death as far as the law is concerned. And so the law will treat it that you had a choice about the matter and you decided to go south. I prefaced it by saying it is a very tough moral question. And I mentioned the trolley problem in passing. I didn't want to go in order not to belabor it. But perhaps I should bring it in here, the toughness of that moral question. Scenario. Let us see that, and this is what is used to describe the problem, the trolley problem. Let us say that one person has been tied to train tracks and he cannot move. And let us say that on a parallel train tracks, there are 5 people who have also been tied there. You know that problem. And let us say that you are standing at the junction of these tracks and you have the lever. And let us also assume that the train is headed for that one person and you are in the middle. What do you do? Do you switch the lever so that you save the 5 persons and you kill the one man, or you save the one man and you kill the 5 persons? Now, on the face of it, it may seem like a very easy question to answer. That 5 persons here, 1 person here. Why don't I just kill the 1 person and leave the 5 persons until you are told that 1 person is your only child? Then all of a sudden, the 5 persons do not matter again. It is that toughness which the law faces. If we are to allow anyone to say, I'm suffering, this one, if I don't take it, my wife will divorce me, my children will not go to school. If we are to permit people to just say, okay, let me pocket this so that at least we can eat tomorrow, we have lost it. And that is why the other option is better, unless it is a life and death matter. You want to clarify it?
I want to complicate your answer.
Okay.
What you said is right. Mm-hmm. But there's a case where somebody did what was right and he was punished. He took the matter to court. He won his case. It was not executed until after a change of government for about 8 years. If the man had died, he would not have benefited from the law. And if the government had continued, he would never have benefited from the law. So?
I totally agree with you. And I think I also touched on this. I touched on this in this sense, that I said that we should be mindful of the consequences of our actions in our dealings with people. Because far too often, we leave people to suffer for the law to give them some recompense. But as you've pointed out, and I said this, the law comes in too late. And sometimes the law is of no help. And even when it is of help, it is of no use to the person. And I gave the example of the person whose leg has been amputated. A story is told of a young man who wanted to be a footballer, maybe Ghana's response to Messi. And he had a problem with one leg, and they mistakenly chopped off the healthy one. Whereupon they decided, well, if we don't chop off the unhealthy one, it will be gangrenous and you will die, and then he becomes a double amputee. Give him all the money in the world, he can't play football, and you've taken away his joy. So I understand you say, but what is the best course of action out of this? But to insist that we shouldn't take at all. Otherwise, we open the floodgates and we become takers. We are already takers. We should not further institutionalize the taking. Sir, I saw a picture, I don't know whether it is photoshopped, in which there was a building, a Swiss hut in the middle of a road, and the road had been constructed around it. Tell me it was photoshopped. Exactly. How on earth did it happen that we have a Swiss hut in the middle of the road? Actually, if the person steps out of a bathroom, she's stepping right in the road. How do you explain such a thing? And we have protected shrines, I understand. We have protected forests, I understand. Why do we even try to build, construct roads through them? I grew up initially at La Mami, near Olympia. In the middle of the, yes, okay. I surprised you, right? in the middle there's a shrine, and the road has to bypass it. Why do we even have to route it there, if that is a protected shrine? These are the things I'm referring to. And then tying it with our senior colleague here as the specter of institutionalized gift giving in our society. When I was in private practice, I went with one of my vehicles to the Accra Mall. It wasn't so nice a vehicle. I was testing it, and when I was parking, the car park attendant didn't look at me twice, and indeed he was even shooing me off. I finished testing it, and 2 hours later I had to come back, so I gave it to the engineer. This time I came with one of my sports cars, and when I got there, same person, 2 hours later, same dress, he was asking me to come. So I parked and I got, hey, he couldn't make me. I said, but I just came here with another car and you were shooing me off to the other place. He said, oh, so something must flow. I mean, so just by change of cars in a few hours, the scheme has totally changed. Someone helps you push your car if it falters and he's expecting something. It's these kind of things I'm referring to. It affects us. It does. Because someone is expectant, no matter what you do. You go to a public service to receive service, and you've paid for it officially. But the person is expecting you to do something. If you don't do it, your file may take 2 years to find. That's what I'm referring to. And sir, the head of the engineering council, I told a story yesterday at a conference. I said that I was in a leadership and management meeting in Mauritius a few weeks ago, and my colleagues in Commonwealth Africa who head anti-corruption institutions talking about their visions and mission statements and all that. Quite a number of them were going on. Corrupt-free society, corrupt-free society, corrupt-free society. It's not possible to have a corrupt-free society. It's not. But the fight against corruption is winnable, and what I would consider victory. So if everyone has it at the back of their minds that sooner or later you will be caught, sooner or later you will be arrested, sooner or later your illicitly acquired wealth be disgorged from you, like you saw in the campaign ad there. just that change of conversation, know that there will be consequences for your actions if you are minded to act corruptly. I'll consider that a victory. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our second round of questions, I have some questions online which I would like to read. Very simple, but I mean, I think some of them have been touched on, but since they've come, I'll still read them. What will be the advice for price fixing in procurement of engineering goods and services in the government sector? It's blunt and straight to the point. What will be the advice for price fixing in procurement of engineering goods and services in the government sector? The second one, what can an engineer do when the politician changes the scope of government projects and determines who should carry out the works? What should an engineer do when the politician changes the scope of a government project and determines who should be given the job to do? What should you do as an engineer? What does the law say? I mean, this is straightforward. That's what I'm saying, that the answers are straightforward, but these are the questions which have come online. And the last one is, engineers work under CEOs who have the upper hand, and what should you do if you are instructed to do what is ethically wrong? It's also to a large extent being answered, but maybe you can give us a summary of that one if there are any other questions. Okay, so Engineer Sophia, so past president will go first before you come. So Engineer Atterright.
Thank you very much. This is a comment on the answers. I think that what we've been listening to has been dealing with maybe after the act. And it's been basically responses to or consequences of actions. In fact, from the special prosecutor's answer to the last question, it virtually leverages on fear. Because of fear, I wouldn't do that. If we do that, yes, it may work, but it will not be a character of the nation. I think that a good citizen must want to do good, whether somebody is watching or not. There are places in this world where people go onto the street, pick up goods, pay, take balances from and not take anything. And people say that in other places, they will not just take their balance, they will lift up the whole pot of the money together with whatever they are buying. Okay, and I'm suggesting that perhaps it has its root in our educational system, because we've always interpreted education very narrowly as just knowledge acquisition and forgotten about the other aspects of it, which deals with purpose, ethics, and so on. And in talking about ethics, I will just say very simply that if we think generational, then we'll always ask ourselves, what we're doing today, how would it benefit our future generation? And there's nobody to answer for them but our conscience, and therefore we'll do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, past president, Engineer Atterright. Engineer Sophia Tijani.
Yes, good evening. So I have a very straightforward, a simple question I want to ask Mr. Kisi. You know, we are talking about always considering the consequences of our actions. So if an engineer, quote unquote, accepts bribe and still goes ahead to ensure that the right thing is done, is that ethical? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next set of questions, the next set of questions are being projected online. Kojo Owusu says, contracts are awarded to companies and the job of the engineer is to supervise to specifications stated in the contract document. How do engineers in this instance work ethically? I think this has also been, to a large extent, addressed. Next question. Edmond Bemu says, in our culture, we accept gifts without paying tax on it, and from people we don't know. How can we separate this form of gifts and ethics? Next question. Engineer Komla Ofori, will the SP recommend a civil case kind of ombudsman to help engineers who are confronted with challenging ethical issues? Will that be a safe shelter? Can the verdict of the ombudsman be binding like that of a judge, court, or arbitration? Nice one, Engineer Komlo Ofori. Next question, Ronald Magnus George. Do you feel large corporations are held to account sufficiently when the cases of poor engineering ethics are brought to light in Ghana? Next question. No, a lot of them are closely related. The questions, if you can see, the questions are closely related. That's why we want to put them together. Franklin Dodu Ashreng. I think it should be the area a lot of wrongdoing in the society nowadays. There are a lot of wrongdoing in the society nowadays. I would like to know if the special prosecutor is interested in punishing those who commit crimes, because since he came to office, I have never seen one yet. Thank you very much. I think most of the questions were similar. That's why we thought we should batch them together and then give it to the special prosecutor. Engineer Dombre, I hope you were satisfied with the answer to your first question. Okay, so, yes, please.
One of my seniors at the bar told me a story that when Bob Marley died, there was this man who came up to these young men who were dancing and drinking, and he asked what's happening, and they answered, "Oh, Bob Marley died." And he said, "Oh, is that the man who works at the NFED?" That is my answer to the gentleman who said he hasn't seen any case yet. Perhaps you should pay more attention to what is happening around you. Or perhaps buried in the engineering project so you don't hear or see. So if we say Bob Marley is dead, you won't come and ask whether that's the man who works at the engineering center. You pointed it out right, that most of these questions I've addressed and most of them are related. But, madam. A question reminds me of fear delegate. So, you take the money, put matches on it, you swear you vote for him, but you go and do the right thing later by voting against him. You have my answer. A bribe is a bribe, no matter how you look at it. Maybe you were trying to teach him a lesson. It's still a bribe. All the questions boils down to choices. Once again, a choice, you have a choice if you have the luxury, let me put it that way, of selecting between competing interests, and you can go course A, course B, course C. That is where you have a choice. And if you are placed in such circumstances and you willingly opt for one course, it will lie very foul in your mouth to complain later that you chose that course and it led you to legal problems. Thank you very much. That's what I answered first. See, Bob Marley died, and you are asking whether it's the man who. I keep telling people that I'm not the court. Yes, but the gentleman, there are several cases before the court. Ombudsman. That is really a legislative policy consideration, and especially the last bit, whether it will be binding and all that. It all depends on what we want to see. I do not want to pretend that I know what happens in your sphere more than you do, but the Engineering Council said you don't have such dispute resolution systems in your regime. I presume you do. Maybe he's asking for legislative reform in that regard, if you've tried it long enough and it's producing startling results. We may have to look at it. I wish my friend Attorney General was here. He would be best to take this question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I thought we were done, but we would have a follow-up question from Engineer Patrick Bekwe, and then our Vice President will take the last one. Since the President is not here, Vice President will have the last word before we move on. So, brief.
Yes,
follow-up.
Mine is more of a follow-up. That so far, all the things we've been talking about is the legal framework that has been put in place. Now, beyond legislation, in your opinion, do you think there are other systems that we need to put in place as a country to deal with corruption? Also, to put it in, have we done enough in putting systems in place to deal with the issue of corruption? Thank you.
So I think Engineer Ato Wright tried to address it, but yeah. So, Vice President.
Yes, thank you very much. So mine is not a question, it's more of a comment. I sometimes get a bit worried when we set examples such as going to the cheese palace, sending a goat or a drink there, and using that to catapult the issue of corruption. Because I think that we as Ghanaians have not paid attention to understanding our cultural practices. And therefore we are quick to say that that is what leads to corruption. Because if you go into the cultural setting and understand it properly, you realize that when the chief sits and calls elders to come and sit with him, all those people are losing man hours. They cannot go to their workplaces. And therefore, the things we send to the chief's palace are supposed to keep them while they are settling cases and adjudicating cases. So it is not an issue of corruption. So it is also given openly. It is not given clandestinely. So we need to understand our own cultural practices so that we do not simply say that everything that we have done in the past or continue to do is corrupt. We need to put things into context so that we can better understand what needs to be done and what we should not do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to end, but we'll take the last two. So, okay, so the last two. This is really the last two. Otherwise, I think I can be prosecuted. So we'll take one online and then one from here. Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Brief.
Yes, mine has to do with the younger generation. What really can be done to ensure that we build a critical mass of people who really have that change mindset to avoid all of these. That for me is a key thing. And the issues of whistleblowing. Do we really have systems around ourselves to protect people from really whistleblowing? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the second part of his question is related to what the engineer Komola Furi said earlier on, his question earlier on. If the wrong thing happens and I'm a whistleblower, what protection do I have? Similar to what Engineer Adombri also said earlier. There's one question from Engineer KD Lai online. We'll take that one. Okay. Yeah, so please come over.
So I agree with you. When we take it to the pastors, we don't call it corruption. We call it offering. Questions all get jumbled in my mind. Sir, when I was concluding my remarks, I said something that let us change the conversation. And that is what the Office of the Special Prosecutor is trying to do. You know, people forget, sometimes they think we are just to investigate and prosecute. But we have other functions, asset recovery and management. And to me, what I consider to be the most important, taking steps to prevent corruption. It is very important. And that ties in with your question. If we develop these systems, if we block the holes, if we plug them, it becomes costly to engage in corruption. And that is my drive. I keep saying this. I cannot weed out corruption from Ghana. That's an unattainable dream. I won't even go there. But to make it costly for a person to engage in it, I'm very fine with it. So if you know the price for engaging in it and you still want to engage in it and you want to pay the price for it, bring it on. You see. And if we change the conversation from corruption prevention angle, it then will address your issue of the younger generation in terms of what we are doing about them. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why in March this year we instituted a Ghana an anti-corruption league table. The thing is that we want to tell our own story. Hitherto, someone tells our story for us, and it is about corruption perception. But if we tell our own story, we own the process and we take it to where we want to take it, not waiting for someone to release some results and then we try and fit ourselves in the scheme of affairs somewhere. So it is one of the major pushes towards corruption prevention. Whistleblowers, informers, and confidential sources. The law places on me a very onerous obligation to ensure their safety, to ensure the safety of their families and relations. Indeed, the law tasks me to take all necessary steps, all, including even safe housing them, so they will be bold enough to show up and report cases. Beyond that, some don't like the sound of this, but that is what the law says. I am required to also give them something by law, by way of encouraging them to snitch on people. And so, under the law, there is a percentage of the recoveries that should be put down to take care of whistleblowers and informers and confidential sources. If you have a confidential source you don't take care of, you won't get any source. Yes.
Our last question is up there. If there appears to be overwhelming evidence that an engineer has been dismissed for refusing to be compromised, can the special prosecutor help in such a case?
Yes, we can go after whoever dismissed him unlawfully to investigate whether it was born of a corruption or corruption-related offense. And if that is found, we will take one of several recourses.
Thank you very much. Let's give us Mr. Kisi Ejebe a big round of applause. Thank you, sir.
I think in my next few years ahead, I would love to be a lawyer, most particularly fill in his shoe, because someone told me I look like him. And it's an honor to look like the OSP, because if you just play some funny games with me, you are in trouble. We are appreciative so much of your onerous lecture that you have given us. What we say? That was an amazing one. I think that we all agree that we can stay here forever. If the questions are too many, the thoughts are too many. So most likely, I'm pretty sure that going forward, this lecture would probably come frequent where the OSP maybe, I'm trying to be careful because my chairman is here and I cannot speak for my chairman and the executive council of the institution, but I most likely believe that this might come more often because we have so many questions unanswered, so many discussions to have. At this point, the OSP as a student, he also needs to be marked during this lecture. And the chairperson who actually gave the OSP the opportunity to give a lecture will now come and give us a closing remarks and mark the OSP. Mommy, I hope you mark him well, so you don't have a problem. Round of applause for me.
No, I don't need to mark him. I think he's marked himself. When he was asking those questions towards the end of his formal remarks, he said, what do you tell the motorist who is wondering why, craters on the road. And I was thinking, maybe you want to find out whether that motorist is driving a stolen vehicle, which he probably is. When you were asking about who makes these runabouts, whatever, my mind went to, I come from Abutia. Everybody, it's a village somewhere in the Volta region. That means I'm on this road going there quite a lot. And since, I don't know, 2014, 2015, they've been trying to dualize some place from Sokode and Nyirawase to Ho. Anyway, where you turn off on the main road to go to my village, Abutia, they've created a humongous runabout, which I don't understand. When they started doing it, I called the regional engineer and I said, what do you think you are doing? Everywhere else in the world, they are changing roundabouts to four-way. This is, why are you creating roundabouts? And there was another one further up, 2, 3, getting into Ho. So I called. 3 times on 3 different occasions. Every time I went, I called. I said, this is not a good idea. He said, Madam, you are the only one complaining. Nobody, he said, this was what was designed, and nobody else has complained. So, that's where we are. People don't complain. Or people complain in their rooms, or at the dinner table, or over a beer, but they don't complain where they should complain. Maybe if enough people had complained to the regional engineer, maybe he would have taken my complaint seriously. Maybe they would have taken another look at the design, but he hasn't. As it is, we are landed with these ridiculous runabouts, and that's what it is. And when I talked about the man who maybe is driving a stolen vehicle, you all saw, is it yesterday, 2 days ago, something in the news? I won't repeat it because but it's there, it's out there. Special prosecutor, only the engineers, and between them, they are first cousins. The people who quantity surveyors, who are their first cousins. They, and only they, know how much a kilometer of road should cost. Only they know. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
A beautiful and wholesome round of applause for our chair. I believe we all agree that Madam could have continued, but because of time, a very wonderful one. So we also recognize that this has been a very good lecture. We have over 200 participants online. And then, what we say to them, they've also done well. And this is at over 300 seater capacity here, and we can see that the whole hall is almost filled up. So we've all done marvelously well, and having the patience to listen to all the discourse that we have had here today. It is important that when someone spends his quality time and does something for you, you appreciate the person, but not in a right, and not in a gift sense. Today we are trying to be very careful with gifts and all that. So at this point, we would like to call on one of our past presidents of the Ghana Institution of Engineering, Engineer Kofi Asare-Yeboah, to come on stage whilst he gives a plaque. I'm trying to be careful, not a gift, a plaque to the chairperson first of the entire program. So we'll call on Madam Elizabeth Ohine. A round of applause for her. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Engineer Kofi Asare-Yeboah, please be standing. Please stay. It appears that you had not talked much, so you were given a lot of tasks to do. At this point, it's also equally important that we invite our special Kwesi Peter, that of my twin brother, OSP, to the platform. It is so great, sir.
Please, he is not suggesting that gift giving is criminal. I hope that is not what you mean.
No, definitely. I'm not suggesting that. That's my law lecturer. That's my law lecturer right there. So, thank you so much, Engineer Kofi Asare-Yeboah, for doing us the honors. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, so we cannot thank you all enough, but it is important to bring someone here who I call the Yasanto of GhIE. And she's an amazing one. I mean, when I mentioned that her face were like, how? But I really admire the qualities and a lot of impeccable skills that she has. She serves with me on 2 committees. And I would like to invite my madam, or our madam, Engineer Sophia Tijani, to give us the closing remarks. The vote of thanks, sorry. Vote of thanks.
Once again, good evening, and my name is Sophia. I'm not Yasantra. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the Almighty God for making it possible, for gifting us, it's not a crime, He has gifted us life, and so we are grateful unto Him. And also for honoring me, for being selected to give the vote of thanks. And I would like to say a special thank you on behalf of the Ghana Institution of Engineering to the speaker, Mr. Kisi Ejabin. We are very, very grateful for honoring our invitation. And I think we've all enjoyed the discussion. So can we, give him a round of applause? Also, a hearty thanks goes to Madam. It's always a joy to listen to you. I really enjoy it, when you speak. Maybe the next lecture we should invite Madam to also come and speak. So thank you, Madam, for coming. We also want to thank the organizers of this event, the Secretariat especially, and then the Professional Practice and Ethics Committee, of which I'm also a member. We thank you for organizing this lecture. We are grateful unto you. And also our past presidents. They are always, I mean, anytime we have an event, they always come. And then for some of us, it gives us a joy, to see that we have, our fathers behind us. So thank you so much for coming. We also want to thank the partners, the media and Water River Authority. We thank them for sponsoring this event, for partnering the institution to make this happen. And to our attendees, I mean, we couldn't have had a great time without you. We are very, very, very grateful for, spending time to come for us to talk about this very important topic. So thank you very much, and thank you to myself also. Thank you.
That's my Madam Engineer Sofa Tijani. Thank you so much for that good work. So I think that one of the excerpts I took from that of the OSP is the fact that you can earn a living in snitching. So yes, I mean, in snitching, not snitching on people without facts, actually, but then if you have some reasons to believe that some illegality or criminality has occurred within the engineering practice or otherwise, you could report it to the office. They will give you the needed protection, the needed support, financial support and everything. So I think we need to also be cognizant of that. At this point, I think we are all tired, isn't it? Yeah, we would like to go home. But then we want to also take note that we have a very small refreshment for you down there at the basement. When you step out, you kindly try to refresh yourself for us. You've done so well, marvelously well, so you need to be refreshed. And we'll be taking photography, myself inclusive. Personally, I want to take it with my twin brother, so I don't want to miss that opportunity. Can we say a word of prayer to close this meeting? Our sovereign instructor, our perfect teacher, the number one engineer, Jehovah God, we thank you so much for this opportunity. This evening has been a blissful moment where we have learned so much from the lecture that was given to us by the OSP, and it appears that a lot more is needed in the future. May you help us as an institution, as the office of the OSP, as all individuals who are stakeholders to rightfulness and integrity or ethical standard and behavior, so that we continuously work along to avoid such issues that would compromise the integrity of our lives, the core lives that we live, so that we'll be able to sit and then continuously serve you. As we will depart from here, refreshment and vehicles that will be moving, may you protect all of us to get to our safe abode, so that in the morning when we see the glory of your sunshine, we'll give thanks to you. And this is our humbly pleadings we come before you through the Secretary of your office. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. That's a wonderful one. Please do enjoy your item 13. It was amazing having you here.
In the skies.